Good evening. I would like to call to order today's meeting, August 20th, 2019, the Little Rock City Board of Directors. We would like to welcome those that are in attendance today, also those that are watching online and streaming. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Director Hendricks, Director Richardson, Director Webb, Director Peck, Director Hines, Director Wright, Director Compuris, Director Fortson, Director Adcock, Vice Mayor Wyrick, Mayor Scott.
Present. Let me now recognize Director Richardson, who will give the invocation.
Please bow your heads. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for all the blessings that you bestowed upon us. We thank you for living in a free society where we can debate issues and we can agree to disagree without taking those disagreements outside these board chambers. We thank you for the safety and security of our employees, and we thank you for the safety and pray for the safety and consideration and security of all of our citizens. These things we pray. Amen.
Amen. May we all stand for a pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now we have the opportunity to hear from Mr. Charles Frazier, who is the CEO of our Rock Region Metro, who will give us an update. Mr. Frazier.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Directors, City Manager, and the rest of the team. My name is Charles Frazier. I'm very excited to be here tonight to present you with what I hope will become an annual update of our organization. I've got a few folks with me that I would like to introduce, but if I could first draw your attention to your screens, and you'll see a historic streetcar, number 226. If you look carefully at the sign there, that's Route 8 going to Pulaski Heights. And this was run by the electric company at the time. Of course, today we are known as Rock Region Metro. And I'd like to talk to you about 6 things. On the left-hand side of your screen, I'm going to take 2 or 3 minutes and just remind you of what our mission is, introduce you to some of our team members, and provide you with some high-level information about Rock Region Metro. On the right-hand side of your screen, I'd like to spend the majority of my time talking to you about some ridership trends, some innovative projects that we have going on, and a forecast for what's coming up in 2020. So our mission is to provide safe, reliable, convenient, and cost-effective transit service. We do that through our bus operators driving our vehicles, our mechanics maintaining those vehicles, and our administrative staff that are organizing the logistics of how this happens. Of course, all of you know that what we're really doing is providing access to opportunity. I hear this all the time in our community. When passengers are boarding our vehicles, they're accessing opportunity. Opportunity to get to work, opportunity to get to the library, to the grocery store, church, and everything that is important in life. So let me share a few numbers with you. 9,500. On an average weekday, this is the number of passenger trips that our system generates in one day. Another number, 237,000, more than 250,000. This is generated from one route, Route 14, right here in Little Rock, in a year. Over 250,000 passenger trips, and 2.3 million passenger trips. This is the number of passenger trips that our entire system generates in 1 year. So we are definitely moving folks throughout the community. I'd like to introduce you to some of our team members, starting with our board of directors. We have a board of directors, 12 in total. Little Rock has 5 appointees to our board, and a couple of folks you know very well. Bruce Moore just left there, but around here. Bruce Moore, Sarah Lenahan, your director, but also here tonight, Matt Lindsay, Jimmy Moses, and Michael Mason, if they'd like to just stand and be recognized for a minute, guys. Thank you very much. Little Rock also has, North Little Rock has 3 appointees on our board. Pulaski County has 2 appointees, one of which is here tonight, Art Kinnaman. If you would just stand for a minute. Ladies and gentlemen, Art Kinnaman is our board chair for about another year and a half. Our final 2 directors, Kyle Wade from Sherwood, Julia Everett from Maumelle. I'm pleased to introduce you to the Metro management team. If you look at the picture, this is a diverse group of men and women that I am proud to work next to. Not everyone is here this evening. We still have buses on the road, and so many of the people are still back at the shop. But I'd like to recognize Donna Bowers, our Director of Operation, Justin Avery, our Deputy Director of Finance, Becca Green is our Director of Public Engagement, Tim Bisbee, our Director of Maintenance, Joe Prokop, our Assistant Director of Facilities, Wanda Crawford, our longtime CFO, and Phyllis Busick, who's here as well. So thank you, everybody, for being with us tonight. A few quick facts for you about Rock Region Metro. The image on the screen in front of you is our service area. We have 24 routes that we provide throughout Pulaski County. We also provide paratransit service for persons with disabilities. That area is also up in front of you now, created around our fixed route service. Many of you have been on transit tours with us recently, and you got to see all three of our facilities. Our administrative office and Metro streetcar barn are in North Little Rock, and then our travel center is in downtown Little Rock. We have a fleet of just under 100 vehicles providing service on the road every day. This is a mix of diesel-powered buses, compressed natural gas, paratransit vehicles, and of course 5 streetcars. And we employ 205 employees, many of which live and reside here in Little Rock. About 156 of our employees are unionized and represented by the Amalgamated Transit Union, who we have a very good working relationship with. This is a snapshot of our 2019 budget, $19.2 million. 13% of that is covered by federal grant funds. 11% of that is generated from fares that we collect from our riders. 2% of that comes from the state. 3% of that this year we made up using reserves. And just put a little bookmark there. I want to talk about that towards the end of the presentation. But the remaining 71% is made up from our funding partners, and you are our primary funding partners, so we really appreciate you. I'd like to talk about ridership trends. We're having some really positive experience this year. I want to start with the streetcar. When I got here last year, streetcar ridership was at an all-time low. Unfortunately, we only generated about 42,000 trips for the entire year. We came to our funding partners and we asked, could we remove one of 4 barriers to ridership, and that was the fare itself. We've removed the fare for a 1-year pilot project. Ridership is up 229% this year. This is a remarkable number, and if you just look at the screen, I've got a chart here. Across the top of the months of the year, January through December, the rows are the years, and what we're looking at here, I'll give you a first comparison in March. Last year, 2018, month of March, we transported 4,339 passengers. This year, 12,451 passengers. Equally impressive, in July of last year, we transported 3,413 passengers. This year, nearly 15,000 passengers. It's significant. That's nearly 500 people every single day. I know that there were some concerns about the potential lost revenue by making this fare free. With ridership at an all-time low, charging $1 per trip, the potential lost revenue was about $40,000. I'm happy to let you know that we've opened up a streetcar sponsorship program. We've already generated about $27,000 in streetcar sponsorships to support the streetcar being fare-free in the future, and we've also had a huge uptick in charters. So a lot of positive things going on here, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. Ridership for the big buses is up 3%. The rest of the nation, just so you know, for a comparison, the rest of the nation continues to lose ridership of a rate of 2 to 4% per year. We are generating a 3% increase right now. So quickly on the graph, for 5 of the last 7 months, we have been greater ridership than the year prior, and in July we had an 11.6% increase over the prior year. Why is that? There's 3 primary reasons. Number 1, unique partnerships. Number 2, fair agreements. And number 3, we're going after non-traditional funding sources. The first thing I'll tell you about is our unique partnerships. We have a fair agreement with the Arkansas Homeless Coalition. I'd like to thank Vice Mayor Wyrick for her leadership, and also Sandra Wilson, who is here tonight from the Arkansas Homeless Coalition. In this fair agreement, they pay us a monthly fee, and then they are able to distribute bus passes to persons who are experiencing homelessness. To be clear, this is not free bus passes for folks that are chronically homeless. This is for folks who are receiving services, they're experiencing homelessness, but they are getting on-the-job training, life skill training, and they are working. So what I'd like you to know that is since we put this program in place, those folks have generated nearly 70,000 passenger trips since February. And we just learned today that we've actually been able to help 70 people transition from homelessness to stable housing. So it's a huge impact in the community. Fare agreements. We have fare agreements with several organizations, Little Rock School District, UALR, Pulaski Technical College. This year we signed on 2 new institutions, Shorter College in North Little Rock and eSTEM. In these fare agreements, the institutions pay us a monthly fee and the students are able to ride the bus year-round for free. Our new fare agreements have generated 25,000 passenger trips. And finally, non-traditional funding sources. Again, I'd like to thank the partners that I reach out to, in this case, Director Kathy Webb, CALS, Nate Coulter is here, and Be Mighty Little Rock, KK De Rosette is here. We went after a grant. This grant came across our desk. We don't routinely go after this type of a grant, but the National Recreation and Park Association was looking for opportunities to increase access to summer lunch programs. We mapped out all of the summer lunch locations, distribution locations, and 96% of those locations were on or adjacent to an existing bus route. With the grant, we were able to purchase and put in the hands of, for 1,200 kids under the age of 18, and those 1,200 students generated nearly 17,000 trips in 8 weeks, getting to fresh food every single day. So those are the reasons why we're seeing an uptick in ridership. In Little Rock, in your jurisdiction, you are actually doing even better than that. You have a 5% increase in ridership. And just a quick look on Route 2, which is in South Main, you've had a 12.4% increase in ridership. Route 14, which is our highest ridership route right here in Little Rock, over 250,000 trips. You've had a 17% increase in ridership. And right here, baseline, Route 23, you have had a 21% increase in ridership. This is astonishing, frankly. So moving on, I want to talk to you a little bit about innovative projects that we have going on. There's a lot of technology disruption going on in the industry, which is why folks are losing ridership. You should expect the transit agency to be innovative, and that's exactly what we're doing. So I'd like to introduce our first innovative project called Metro Connect. If ever you have used Uber or Uber Pool, that's what's happening here. And I'd like to thank Director Doris Wright for her partnership. We have a Metro Connect zone created on John Barrow Road. We used to have the Route 9 that went up and down John Barrow Road. Not great service. The bus only came every 65 minutes. Now what happens is we have a smaller vehicle, and we've created a zone that goes to the east to Boyle Park, to the west, all the way over to Shackelford Crossing, north to Henderson Middle School, south to the West Central Community Center. Folks are able to hail their vehicle. It comes and picks them up at their location within that zone and then takes them anywhere else within that zone. And so the waiting time for this is very, very good. Right now we're showing about 15, 20-minute average wait, which is compared to the 65-minute wait. This is a 6-month-long pilot project. It is primarily a learning tool for my organization so that we can learn how to run the software and operate the service. The goal is to improve the customer experience, and then once we have this down, I think we have future applications. I can see this working at the Port Authority, getting folks actually to the front door of their jobs, possibly the airport, a zone around the travel center itself, and this could replace some of our more unproductive routes. Other projects that are coming, we're not ready to quite roll these out yet. Metro Pool, which is a van pool service, Rides to Wellness, which is a same-day non-emergency medical transportation service that we could roll out throughout the entire county, and then in downtown circulators as well. Why are we doing all of this? We need to fill our toolbox with different types of services to meet the mobility needs of our community. Finally, in the area of innovation, I just want to introduce to you our transit-oriented development study. If you recall, we have 24 routes. 23 of those routes all converge at our travel center downtown. We have a hub and spoke type model of network here. What other cities have done that have a similar tight network, they have made their travel center a destination. And so what they do is, if you look at the pictures there, they build on top of the travel center spaces to be used. It could be grocery stores, workforce housing, governmental services. And so our project is a feasibility study. It kicks off next month. We're looking to make the transfer center a destination. What could it be? It could be a grocery store. In that way, it addresses the food desert issue that we have. Suddenly, those 2.3 million passenger trips on the 24 routes that we have all have access to get right to the travel center and get healthy food. It could be governmental services. It is an opportunity for a public-private partnership. It could be eligible for grant funding, and so the Phase 1 feasibility study is kicking off next month. So, a lot said there. I'm starting to wind down here, and I appreciate your patience. What can you expect in 2020? The first thing I want you to know is that, of course, I'm sharing very positive information with you, and it's all good things. But we have a long way to go to get to a robust transportation system here in Central Arkansas, and not all of our routes are productive. They're not all productive. To address that, we will be starting with a comprehensive operational analysis. We called this RIDE 2020. RIDE stands for Route Innovation, Development, and Evaluation. This is our formal strategic plan that will take 9 to 10 months to execute. The goal is to maximize both ridership and efficiency. We will analyze every single route. We will analyze the outcomes of our pilot projects, and most importantly, identify solutions for poorly performing routes. We will also be performing an audit of the funding partner matrix. This is important. The matrix as it currently lives is about 30 years old. We need to modify that and update it to stay in line with the new services that we're bringing online so it's fair to all of the funding partners. We'll have a tremendous amount of stakeholder activity, and at the end, we will reimagine what transportation looks like here in Little Rock and in Central Arkansas. The 2020 budget. I want to let you know that we are starting to look at our 2020 budget. It's very important to me that we are demonstrating that we are absolutely 100% efficient with taxpayer dollars. And so we will be looking at this year, but there are some important imperatives that I will be articulating to my board. Number one, I think it's very important that we increase our reserves for the purpose of going after competitive grants. Something you should know is that the federal government, FTA, advertised over $400 million worth of federal grants this year, of which we did not apply for any. And the reason we didn't apply is because we didn't have the local match ready to go. Local match will cover 80% and sometimes 85% of a project. So I think it's important as we go into the budget process to consider increasing that reserve. Also important, I think it's important that we maintain existing levels of service while we complete our comprehensive operational analysis. We need the ability to complete our pilot projects, and we need the ability to identify options for non-productive routes. We don't want to just stop service abruptly. And then finally, I think it's imperative that we keep the streetcar system fare-free, at least for the next year. In closing, I would like you to know that even though the comprehensive operational analysis has not been completed yet, I think there are some opportunities for strategic investment during this next process for budget. Number one, I'd like to recommend that we expand the Little Rock School District Fare Agreement. For less than $15,000 for the year, we could expand that agreement to cover elementary and middle school students. Right now, it only covers high school students. I think there's a possibility to implement a pilot project for a downtown circulator, generate some movement between different parts of the community on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night. For less than $50,000, we can partner with Pulaski County and North Little Rock to do so. The Chenal Promenade Express route, I think this is a critical opportunity for us. A lot of jobs out there for folks to get to. For about $300,000, we could get a pilot project going, express service to that critical area of the community. And although I'm not going to recommend this as action this year, but I do feel confident increasing the frequency on your productive routes. You've got 5 very productive routes, the Route 3, 5, 14, 22, and 23. High ridership. The frequency right now is 35 minutes. Taking those to 30 minutes is a quality of life improvement for the folks that depend on the service. With that, and I thank you for giving me the opportunity to share all this information with you. I want to thank you for being our strategic partner. I'd like to thank all of the directors that have worked with me and welcomed me to this community. I'd like to thank you for coming on our transit tours and learning about the service that we provide. And with that, I would entertain any questions that you had, or just be quiet.
Thank you so much, Charles. Director Peck.
Well, I don't really have a question. I just want to sing your praises and tell you how happy we are that you're here. And I had so much fun on my transit tour. And I put some things out on social media and got so many responses and shares and likes and just questions. Wow, I didn't know there were 2.3 million riders, and I didn't know the streetcar was free, and it was up 229%. So I think we just need to tell that story more. I think a very common thing is people say, I never see people on the bus. And so I'm kind of repeating Becca and Charles's mantra, well, what time are you looking at the bus? And where is that bus? So I think we have to do a better job of telling our story, but I'm so excited you're here, and thanks again to Sandra and BJ for the people that are currently experiencing homelessness. And here's one message from Mayor Stoda, former Mayor Stoda, on my Facebook post. Way to go, Charles. Keep getting our public officials riding the bus. Ditch the keys week.
Thank you.
Thanks so much,
Thank
Director
you.
Peck. Director Wright.
Thank you, Mayor. Awesome presentation, Mr. Frazier and Mr. Moore. I want to commend your board at Rock Region for this hire. As he knows, I have not always been happy. I'm very happy. I like innovative thinking. I like to see you take what you have and make it work, because you're not always guaranteed to get more. And if something's not working, let's tweak it to make it work. And I think, Mayor, we have an outstanding gentleman standing here before us that is able to do that. And what I truly love is that he has a background in community action. In other words, he understands people. And because you're at the very grassroots level when you work in community action, you understand the issues and the barriers that people face. And oftentimes executives don't. And I really appreciate the fact that you do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Wright. Director Richardson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Charles, I want to just dovetail your point about the homeless work that you're doing. I commend you and your team, and you personally get involved in making sure that our homeless population have access to services and supports to help them move beyond homelessness. And your work with Sandra has been commendable. I know last week at the last minute occasion we had a young lady who came up who had some real serious issues, and you guys worked with her to get her transportation to some much needed doctor appointments. And I was really impressed with your ability to jump in and get right on top of it personally, and along with involving your team with Sandra and others. And I think it's really, really a wonderful, wonderful opportunity for us to help our homeless population get back on their feet. So thank you for that, my friend.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor Wyrick.
Thank you, Mayor. Your presentation is so different than some of the past CEOs that we've had from the bus companies. It seemed like when we heard from them, it was always gloom and doom, and you're so upbeat and so vibrant and so interested in improving our bus service. I know I met you in September of last year, and within a 30-minute conversation, I figured out this man knows more about this bus service, and he's only been here 3 months than I do. I figured I'd have to tell him a thing or two about a thing or two, and he knew it all. But we're so excited that you're here. You're very easy to work with, and I just appreciate your forward thinking, your ability to reach out for additional money to look after our kids, like the Be Mighty program. Finding that grant, and Kathy and Cappy able to walk into $30,000 for transportation, that's just unbelievable. Now we need to go after that $405 million that's out there. The question I have for you is, when you do your study, how does the general public interact with that? Are there going to be things that people that ride the bus service, ride the buses, are there things that they're going to have to do in order to help with that study that you're going to do?
Yeah, absolutely. There'll be an extensive public outreach process. We actually started that process earlier this year. We've already done onboard surveys of over 1,500 of our riders, really finding out why do they use the bus, what's their true origin, what's their true destination. And so we'll continue that process with our riders, but important, we will also be reaching out to our non-riders and to our elected officials to make sure that we really unearth those unmet needs. So there'll be lots of opportunity, and I'll keep you well versed and everybody
We'll
informed
need to
about.
know how we can help in that. And
Absolutely.
Thank you for being here, and thank you for all the work you've done.
Thank
and
you.
your team. I know you've got a great, young, energetic team that works with you. I see them all back there, and they're all working. They all have buses for hats. And
I'd let you know that every one of these folks we're all public servants. We are here to work for you and serve the community, so thank you for that.
yeah, I've met a lot of them, and they truly do have the mindset that you do in improving the bus service for our citizens. So thank you.
Thank you.
Director Hines.
Thanks. Charles, I want to kind of echo what BJ said. I would put it as some of our previous leadership was tone deaf and as to the needs of the different areas of our community, because we have a very diverse city, and the needs in West Little Rock are different than West Central and different than Southwest and East. And so I appreciate your vision and look forward to it. And I think probably the shining stars, Mr. Moses and I have had discussions about the River Rail before, and I think I had several years ago when I first got on the board, I said you can either double the fee or make it free, and I don't know that either would impact ridership, but obviously making it free has had an impact, and you've figured out how to offset the revenue loss in a creative manner, which I think there was never a willingness to try that approach. So I appreciate you, and it looks like we may have made some lemonade there. So thanks.
Thank you for that feedback. I just want to add in, we've actually signed on 3 new sponsors this week. We're really excited, and I think that what we're seeing is that the businesses are seeing the benefit of having the streetcar full because we're able to actually make an economic impact there and direct people to go in and try that burger and have that fish and go see the show. And so we're really educating our employees, our streetcar operators, to make sure that we're impacting Main Street there.
Director Webb.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jimmy and I had the misfortune of co-chairing the transit campaign a few years ago, and I think had we talked about access to opportunity that we might have had a different outcome. I know how hard BJ and Sandra and others have worked on this, on the TAP project, but when you hear that 70 people, the rides make a difference, the number of rides make a difference, but when you hear that 70 people have transitioned out of homelessness, and then you talk about Be Mighty and you talk about almost 17,000 rides, but you talk to a mom who said, I take my kids with me to go grocery shopping, and we go to the community center, and we go get the meals, and we go do this, and it's changing lives. And every time we've emailed you about, hey, here's a grant, can we, apply for it, or you email us and say, hey, here's a grant, it's like, yes. So thank you, and thank your team, and they do a great job. And I hope if folks haven't taken that tour yet, they will, because it's pretty fantastic. So thank you for everything.
Thank you.
Director Fortson.
Charles, I applaud, as the others have, your innovation. Some 20 years ago, we had an exercise in Little Rock called Vision 2000, and I was privileged to serve as chair of the Transportation Subcommittee. And one of the frustrations there is all we could get from the experts was talk about light rail from downtown to the airport or from the suburbs to downtown at astronomical prices. And the bus service would continue as is, and we got to have a tax increase to pay for it. There was no innovation and a real frustration that there was no thinking outside the box like you've done. I've applauded what you've done as far as marketing the service, getting partners, generating other sources of revenue. You may still need an independent source of revenue, but you've gone out and found other ways to support what you're doing, and I think it's really exciting, and I applaud you for what you've done.
Thank you. I would just like to say that really I can only be as successful as you help me, and so it's really the partnerships that you are all providing me that's giving me the opportunities for some solutions, so I thank you all.
Director Peck.
I'm sorry, I know I've already gone, I'll be brief, but I had to address the downtown circulator piece because I'm so interested in that, and I hope that as colleagues, we can have this discussion because this happens in other communities. I was just talking to somebody today, well, I work downtown, I'd like to go eat at East Village or Soma, but I can't park, and whether it's tourism, getting people around downtown to all of our very vibrant neighborhoods, they're a little hard to connect if you have a car or walk. I mean, I think that is such a great thing that we could do for our city. I hope we can make it happen.
Sure, thank you. Just want to note, I was having a conversation with Director Wright today, and what I was thanking her for was the opportunity to do the pilot project for the Metro Connect because we haven't done that service before, and so we may fall down and scuff our knees in trying to figure out how to operate it. But I think if we understand that we're going and we're trying to be innovative, that we can certainly try these things. Mm-hmm. It's within our ability to do so and modify as needed.
Thank you.
Director Hendricks.
Thank you. Would you have your staff to stand if they're here? And thanks for the report.
Yes. Staff, if you all stand up. I want to tell you, folks, I'm so proud to work with these folks beside me. They're all experts in what they do. They have multiple disciplines. So if we could give them a round of applause, please.
Director Adcock.
Yes. We have our meeting Friday
Yes,
to
we do.
start looking at Noosa Neighborhood USA and how the bus service can be a part of that, and I look forward to that. I think that it'll be very informative and great for all of us, but I'd also like for you to give this presentation as a workshop at Noosa so other cities can see what we're doing in Little Rock. And being here 28 years, in the past, I would never have invited some of our people to present at a Noosa conference. So I think you'd make a great presentation for the city of Little Rock.
I would be happy to do so. Anytime that I can be a public servant to this board, I'm happy to do that. So please.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, Charles, I just want to reiterate what everyone's already said just by saying thank you. We appreciate your connectedness with the community. We appreciate your creative solutions to public transit and mobility in our city and on the overall Central Arkansas region, and just want to commend you for all the hard work that you do day in and night. Appreciate you.
Thank you, sir. We're just getting started.
Have a great day.
All right. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, if you would please read the consent agenda.
The consent agenda consists of a motion to approve the minutes of the June 4th, 2019 Little Rock City Board of Directors meeting, a resolution to set September 3rd, 2019 as the date of public hearing on the appeal of the Planning Commission's denial of a plan zoning development titled Lots 2 and 3, Chavot Office Park, short form PCD, located at 17,705 Cantrell Road, Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes. A resolution to accept title to property donated to the city of Little Rock, Arkansas by quitclaim deed to be used for neighborhood revitalization programs and for other purposes. I was looking on the wrong thing. A resolution authorizes the city manager to execute a contract with Enterprise Fleet Management Trust for an annual purchase order in the amount of not to exceed $2,098,000 plus applicable taxes and fees to lease up to 84 vehicles to utilize the 5-year replacement plan for the Little Rock Police Department and other city departments, and for the purposes, a resolution to amend Little Rock, Arkansas Resolution 14,950 of March the 5th, 2019 to approve a 10% increase in the purchase cost of one Pierce Velocity pumper truck with G&W Diesel Services Incorporated to include additional options required by the Little Rock Fire Department and for the purposes. Funding from the 2012 3/8 capital improvement sales tax. A resolution authorized the city manager to enter into a contract with Hasty Awards in the amount of $72,816.25 to provide the 2020 Little Rock Marathon finishers medals, and for the purposes, a resolution to express the willingness of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas to utilize Arkansas Department of Parks, Heritage, and Tourism Outdoor Recreation Grant Program funds to authorize the mayor and city manager to execute any and all necessary applications, agreements, and contracts for its administration and for other purposes. A portion of the funding will be from the 2012 3/8 capital improvement sales tax. A resolution authorizes the mayor and city clerk to execute a historic preservation easement to the state of Arkansas, acting by by and through the Arkansas Historic Preservation Program for Pavilion Number 1 in Boyle Park, located in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes, a resolution to authorize the city manager to execute a one-year lease agreement with the option to renew for one additional year in the amount of $173,280 for property owned by the Institute of Basic Life Principles Incorporated to provide office space for the Little Rock Police Department, and for the purposes, a resolution to authorize a $350,000 distribution to the Arkansas Arts Center for 2019 maintenance and expenses pursuant to the Little Rock, Arkansas Resolution number 14,234 of November 3rd, 2015, and for the purposes, that concludes the consent agenda.
There's a motion and second. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Motion passes. Madam Clerk, if you would, please read the grouped items for the first time.
An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a plan office district titled Philander Smith College New Student Housing, short form POD, located at 900 West Daisy L. Gatson Bates Drive, Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes, an ordinance to approve a plan zoning development and establish a plan commercial district titled Rebel Kettle, revised short form PCD, located 822 East 6th Street, Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes, an ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a plan office district titled Copper Well Retreat, short form POD, located at 12,418 Cantrell Road, Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes, an ordinance to grant a franchise for the use of city right-of-way for the construction of a 24-hour hotel valet lane located in front of Hall and Davidson buildings at buildings 201 to 215 West Capitol Avenue, Little Rock, Arkansas, to set the other terms and conditions for this franchise for the franchisee, and for the purposes, first reading.
There's a motion second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Motion passes. Second reading.
An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a plan office district titled Philander Smith College New Student Housing, short form POD, located at 900 West Daisy L. Gatson Bates Drive. An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a plan commercial district titled Rebel Kettle, revised short form PCD, located at 822 East 6th Street. An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a plan office district titled Copper Well Retreat, short form POD, located at 12,418 Cantrell Road. An ordinance to grant a franchise for the use of city right-of-way for the construction of a 24-hour hotel valet lane located in front of the Hall and Davidson buildings at buildings 201 to 215 West Capitol Avenue, Little Rock, Arkansas, to set the other terms and conditions for this franchise for the franchisee. Second reading.
There's a motion and second to suspend the rules for a third and final reading. Third reading. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Motion passes. Third reading.
An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a plan office district titled Philander Smith College New Student Housing, short form POD, located at 900 West Daisy L. Gatson Bates Drive. An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a plan commercial district titled Rebel Kettle, revised short form PCD, located at 822 East 6th Street. An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a plan office district titled Copper Well Retreat, short form POD, located at 12,418 Cantrell Road. An ordinance to grant a franchise for the use of city right-of-way for the construction of a 24-hour hotel valet lane located in front of the Hall and Davidson buildings at 201 to 215 West Capitol Avenue, Little Rock, Arkansas, to set the other terms and conditions for this franchise for the franchisee, and for the purposes, third and final reading.
Thank you so much. Before we go for the vote, we'll have a question from Director Adcock.
Mr. Moore, on item 14, what other hotels in Little Rock are paying a franchise fee for this item?
Mr. Honeywell.
Mr. Honeywell, is this going to be a hotel there on Capitol Avenue?
Yes, ma'am, it is, at the corner of Louisiana and Capitol.
And it's going to go all the way, all that block?
No, it's about half the block, I believe, on the south side.
And what is the franchise fee for this?
The actual fee itself?
Uh-huh. I looked on our information, and there was nothing with information on this item.
It is, let me find it real quick because I don't want to give you the wrong number. $6,900 annually.
And what do the other ones pay? Is it
This is the first instance where we've had this particular condition of someone using our a right-of-way for this type of valet lane.
Does the hotels on Markham Street pay franchise fees?
Not that I'm aware of. I can research that, though.
Okay.
Director Hancock, your board may remember that there was a request for Raduno's Pizza that wanted to use outside areas for seating, and that's where we started charging the franchise fee. The Public Works Department looks at the rental property value and then works it out for that. And these franchises are not forever, so we're able to go back and look upon them as we can. I think we've done more than just these two. I think there's a couple more.
Yes, this is you were asking specifically about a hotel.
The hotels on Markham Street.
There are other situations with other businesses where we're doing franchises similar to this, where they're impacting parking and using the existing public right-of-way as private space, and that's how.
Do we go back then on those that's been using it for several years and have a date that we start charging franchise fees?
Are you talking about someone that is not being charged a franchise fee now?
Mm-hmm. That has been there for 30, 40 years, and they've never paid a franchise fee, but new people going into business are being asked to pay a franchise fee.
I'll be happy to look into that.
Okay, I'd like to know how many other businesses are using city right-of-ways like this,
Okay.
and if they're paying franchise fees.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
We've now had 3 readings for the ordinances. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Motion passes. Madam Clerk, would you please read item 15 for the first time?
An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a planned commercial district titled Harris Short Form POD, located at 8022 to 8028. Located at 8122 to 8124 Stagecoach Road, Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes first reading.
Move to suspend the rules and place on second reading.
There's a motion to place on second reading and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Motion passes. Second reading.
An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a planned commercial district titled Harris Short Form POD, located at 8122 to 8124 Stagecoach Road, second reading.
Move to suspend the rules and place on third and final reading.
There's a motion to second place on third and final reading. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Motion passes. Third reading.
An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a planned commercial district titled Harris Short Form POD, located 8122 to 8124 Stagecoach Road, third and final reading.
We've now had 3 readings on this particular ordinance. Are there any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Motion passes. Madam Clerk, if we would, please read item number 16.
An ordinance to condemn certain structures in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas with structural fire and health hazards, to provide for summary abatement procedures, to direct city staff to take such action as is necessary to raise and remove such structures, to declare an emergency, and for the purposes. First reading.
There's a motion and second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Motion passes. Second reading.
An ordinance to condemn certain structures in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas with structural fire and health hazards, to provide for summary abatement procedures, to direct city staff to take such action as is necessary to raise and remove such structures, to declare an emergency. Second reading.
There's a motion and second place on third and final reading. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Motion passes. Third reading.
An ordinance to condemn certain structures in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas with structural fire and health hazards, to provide for summary abatement procedures, to direct city staff to take such action as is necessary to raise and remove such structures, to declare an emergency. Third and final reading.
We've now had 3 readings for this particular ordinance. Are there any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Motion passes. Madam Clerk, if you would, please read item number 17 for the first time.
We've got an emergency clause on 16.
I'm sorry. Motion for the emergency clause? There's a motion and second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Motion passed for the emergency clause. Madam Clerk, would you now please read item number 17?
An ordinance to declare it the policy of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, to make the investigation, citation, arrest, seizure, or prosecution of misdemeanor marijuana offenses by adults the lowest law enforcement priority, and for the purposes first reading.
There's a motion. Do I hear a second? There's a second. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it.
An ordinance to declare it the policy of the City of Little Rock, Arkansas, to make the investigation, citation, arrest, seizure, or prosecution of misdemeanor marijuana offenses by adults the lowest law enforcement priority, and for the purposes second reading.
Is it a second reading?
We just finished second reading.
Third reading. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. Now that we've had 3 readings on the ordinances.
Read it twice. We read
Second.
it twice.
Oh, we're on the third reading. Second reading. All right.
An
Madam
ordin-
Clerk, would you please read for the third time now?
An ordinance to declare it the policy of the City of Little Rock, Arkansas, to make the investigation, citation, arrest, seizure, or prosecution of misdemeanor marijuana offenses by adults the lowest law enforcement priority. Third and final reading.
Okay. There a motion for the third and final reading? Sorry, Lance got me. Apologize. We've now had third and final readings. We'll now go into our agenda item cards. Before we go into that, Mr. Kenneth Grand.
Hello, Mr. Mayor. Hello, Chair people. I'm Kenny Grand. I am doing joint venture development with the Business Innovation Center at Bowen Law School. We've got a little cafe space there. In the year 2005, I was going to school at UCA. I was the first person in 3 generations to be able to go to a university. My dad's a sharecropper and my mom was handicapped, so I had a part-time job at Blockbuster. I had an internship at the Arkansas History Archives where I was doing photo restorations, transcribing folk histories, stuff such as that. And then I had another internship with the Oxford American. In the spring of 2005, I was in a car with somebody who had, unbeknownst to me, taken a good number of opiates, and we were pulled over. I was sleeping in the car. The police pulled us over. They searched us all. They found some marijuana. It was about like an 1/8 bag on me. They didn't find anybody on the other, or anything on the other person. That person went home. I was chained to a bench for 18 hours. And the next day, I got out and realized I was ineligible for Pell Grants. So essentially being caught with small possession charge of marijuana made it to where I could no longer go to school. I was I had a mentorship and was working on a thesis with Herman Daly, the former director of the World Bank's department on poverty and environment. He was currently a professor at the University of Maryland with World Systems Theory group, and like I said, doing the other things. So it really disrupted my life. I know in Little Rock, there's been probably a good 2,000 or so people who've been arrested after searches and seizures since that time, just on marijuana charges, not traffic tickets, not a violent offense. So I just came to speak up to kind of also show a face to the whole situation with it. Like right now, we've also got medicinal marijuana. There's a farm in East End, Arkansas, that I'm actually doing negotiations with to do value-added processing and marketing there with a firm out of California. So in my opinion, and objectively, it seems like it would be in the city's best interest to prioritize the enforcement and investigation of methamphetamine, other crimes such as that, and really lower the strain on local law enforcement, on the local and county jails, to enable the processing and enforcement of other more violent crimes and things such as that. So I think that's about it. I just
Thank you so much. Mr. Robert Webb. Mr. Robert Webb. Does not see Mr. Robert Webb. Mr. Russ Raycott.
A little over a year ago, Director Richardson presented a similar ordinance, and it wasn't supported. Director Hendricks likes to point out that there's a racial issue on this board, and I think that I can safely say that none of the black board members have ever had a resolution or ordinance that they put forth get passed. And this particular enforcement action adversely impacts African Americans more than any other group. And that's nationwide, and I'm sure it's the same here in Little Rock. And after last year, after Director Richardson's ordinance failed, that little city of Jacksonville that we don't give much thought to in North Pulaski County, they hired a new police chief who came from a big city, I believe Chicago. And one of the first things he did was deprioritize marijuana arrests. And I think some of the reasons that he's done that in some of these other cities, Baltimore has done it, Florida has done it, Louisville, where our former chief came from, their Metro Council just passed an ordinance back in June that tells police officers not to prioritize marijuana possession. Now, the studies show nationally that drug arrests, in particular marijuana arrests, do not lower crime. In fact, it increases it. And the studies show that for every 10 arrests for drug possession, there's a rise in the index for other crimes like violent crimes and property crimes. And these studies and other cities that have passed similar ordinances have argued that letting marijuana cases go actually makes communities safer by shifting the focus to stopping violence, which of course I think we're on about our 29th homicide if you count the 2 committed by police officers here in Little Rock. That it stops violence and untangles a legacy of racial discrimination, allowing the seeds of trust to germinate in neighborhoods where a chief complaint of police officers is that there is no one that will help them solve crimes. Now, I've been part of groups and vigils and discussions where we've had the police implore us as activists to act as a bridge with the community, especially the black community, that has little confidence that the police will solve crimes. And I think that this is a step that we go using 21st police technology, 21st century police practices to shift that focus. Like I said, there's other cities, Louisville, Kentucky, Baltimore, Maryland, Chicago, Philadelphia, Brooklyn, and Arkansas. Besides Jacksonville, we have Fayetteville and Eureka Springs, who decades ago addressed this issue, and Fayetteville has upgraded theirs some just last month. Now, and a particular thing that we have here is, we have the medical marijuana cards that people have now. People can legally smoke marijuana. And I think that they can smoke marijuana in their home, and if they decide they need to run to the grocery store and get milk and eggs because it's fixing to snow, if they don't have a tail light, I'm sure probably the only one of us in the up here right now is probably the mayor, doesn't remember back when they used to have to get your car inspected. You had to do that every year. And that's how most of us found out that we had a tail light out or a headlight out, was when you had to pay that inspection shop a premium to get that light bulb changed. And what we have now, and there are cases that are out there in the news today where certain police agencies use the pretext of the odor of marijuana in a car to do a search, and it's like a gateway to harass individuals. In fact, that's gone on so far that a lot of cities have banned that practice. Now in Florida, because you have legal hemp, and most people can't tell the difference in the feel, the appearance, the feel, and the smell of hemp and marijuana. They're come from the same plant. Hemp farming is legal in Arkansas. That is under the federal 2014 Farm Bill. And so if you have an officer, you have someone that has a legal hemp farm, and they smell like they've been firing up a bong all afternoon because of the smell, and they get pulled over because they don't have a tail light, or they've done a rolling stop at a stop sign, and the officer smells marijuana, and they find hemp in the car, they could arrest these individuals. In Florida, they have had to address that, and they've had to stop detaining people over the pot smell. And they've come up with a law that is called Odor Plus, that they have to have more than just the smell because of all these issues. And, unfortunately, there are hundreds and thousands of videos that you can just search on YouTube, just by searching odor of marijuana, and you'll see individuals. It's like a phrase that the officers use when they're dealing with an individual. They'll say, "Stop resisting." And we've seen individuals who aren't moving. In fact, it happened in North Little Rock with Officer Crowder. He's an officer over there who's he's been suspended and he's facing criminal charges. They use this as a tool to defend themselves. And I think that we need to look at this. I'm not encouraging the use of marijuana. I know most of the people on the board don't use marijuana and wouldn't, but there are individuals that do use it legally under the Medical Cannabis Act, and I suspect that there will be a day in Arkansas that marijuana possession and smoking recreational use is made legal. And that's just a change of the times, and we need to be proactive and not be outdone by cities like Jacksonville, Eureka Springs, and Fayetteville. We are the capital of the city. Why don't we do some things and become a leader and not a follower? I encourage all of you to support Director Richardson's bill and show that you are not racially divided in these ordinances. Thank you for your time.
Seeing no other questions or no other comments for item number 17, are there any questions from the board? Director Richardson?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. With your permission, I'd like to read a support letter from Senator Elliott. I think she sent us one last year when we did this. I think we did this last year in June, Bruce. We sponsored this in June. So Senator Elliott sent us an email today, Mayor Frank Scott and members of the Little Rock Board of Directors. When you last considered an ordinance that would make misdemeanor marijuana offenses committed by adults the lowest law enforcement priority, I wrote to you a support letter that supported that proposal. This letter here is to confirm my continued support, and I don't take my position lightly. But given such offenses a low priority is valuable for concentrating on more serious law enforcement issues, reducing spending on such offenses, and not and not catching people in criminal justice system just for the flow of criminal justice with lower level offenses. With respect, I ask you to please support this ordinance. Senator Joyce Elliott, Arkansas, State Senator, Arkansas District 31. And Mayor, I know last week Joan asked for the chief to be here, and I'm glad to see him here tonight, and I thought Chief Bewley did a wonderful job of capturing the meetings and conversations I've had with our current chief about this issue. But since our ordinance was defeated, Oklahoma City, New York City, Jacksonville, Arkansas, they've all passed similar approaches to address this issue. And I thank Mr. Grant and I thank Russ for speaking up to the merits of this. I think that it has a disproportionate impact on minorities, especially poor minorities. And I think it contributes to a criminal justice system that supports misery merchants who capitalize on the misery of other people, who get jobs and maintain jobs on the misery of other folks. I think it's a wonderful opportunity for us to expose that. I think Mr. Graham made a wonderful, wonderful point about the loss of Pell Grants when you get convicted of a marijuana offense. One offense, one conviction, you lose a Pell Grant. And not only does that impact your ability to proceed in life, it impacts your ability to also get employment and then sometimes even housing. And we all know those are some of the precursors of criminal activity that maturate to violent crime. And we constantly say public safety is our number one priority up here. But yet sometimes we would be willing to tolerate the conditions that produce criminal activity, which to me is this cognitive dissonance I wrestle with from time to time. And I've heard from previous chiefs, the assistant chief and our current chief, that we have that approach. We embrace that approach. So I need to know what's an approach versus a policy. Do we have a daily use of force approach, or do we have a daily use of force policy? And we said we've embraced that approach, where from 2012 to 2016, we had a 95% increase in arrests for marijuana possession only. No other offenses. It's a 95% increase from 2012 to 2016. I have the numbers, Chief, if you want to see it. It was reported, rated by the Arkansas Democrat Gazette when they did a story on this. So those numbers have gone up. I have a lengthy report that I don't want to share because it's too lengthy, but ACLU did a program, or did a research and a project on the war on marijuana in black and white. Billions of dollars wasted on racially biased arrests. Now, we would be hard pressed and really would be fooling ourselves if we didn't think systemically there were not some systemic racial disparities in our criminal justice system. And I take you back to when I used to do work with a nonprofit organization where we had disproportionate minority confinement in the juvenile justice system, where black males were 6 times more likely, Hispanic males were 4 times more likely to be confined in the juvenile justice system, despite having the same background and committing the same types of offenses as white males. That's systemic. And I think I appreciate John asking the chief to be here tonight, because I really want to get his take on this. And we talked about this, and ideally this wouldn't be an ordinance. It would be a legislative or administrative directive. When I've asked about a written approach, a written description of the approach we have, we don't have one. I haven't seen one. So I don't know, Chief, if this is something we cover in recruit schools, this is something we cover in our daily briefings or sessions, but I've heard that this is an approach, but I haven't seen anything in writing. So to me, if we don't have anything in writing and it's an approach, then you can selectively enforce this. You can have an officer pull me over and arrest me, pull Kathy over and give her a citation. You can have an officer pull Irma over, arrest her, and pull Kathy over and give her a citation. So it's that kind of imbalance that we see from time to time when you have opportunity where we don't have any directives to guide our actions and the policies of our police department, where you can selectively enforce what you want to enforce. And that's the unfortunate reality we're living in, and that's the impetus, Chief, for me bringing this forward. I thank Mr. Grant and Ray Kopp for bringing out some of those issues that I think we need to address and look at. So I'd be really, really interested in having you, since Joan asked you to come in tonight, having you come to the mic, my friend.
Chief Humphrey.
Thank you, Mayor and directors. First of all, Director Richardson, with all due respect, Oklahoma City did not make an ordinance. The chief of police made it clear, because all of the drug offenses in the state of Oklahoma were reduced to misdemeanors. And so the chief of police made it very clear that that was not a priority for them to make those small arrests for marijuana. So there is not an ordinance in Oklahoma. That was a statement that was made by the chief of police. The other thing is, when you talk about what's a priority, we could put our emphasis somewhere else. Right now, we're sitting on a 6% decrease in violent crime and a decrease in overall crime. So apparently, we have been putting our resources somewhere else. The other thing is that I want to say is that it is not smart for a police chief to put in policy that we will make these the lowest level of enforcement priority, because officers do have discretion. You never want to take those discretions away from officers. However, you hope and pray as a police chief that the officers are following the rules of the law. I totally understand what's being said regarding, I've done studies, I've been doing this for 31 years. Me being an African-American male, I do understand that sometimes there are unbalances there. I do understand that. There's been proof regarding not having equitable processes for minorities. I totally understand that. But if you look at our numbers, the 2012 to 2016 numbers, I can't speak to that. But I will tell you is that the majority of the marijuana arrests are minor possessions of possessions of drugs do result in citations. Now, let me explain something else. If I stop you on a traffic stop, a legitimate traffic stop, and you have a warrant for your arrest, and I conduct an arrest, and during the search, I find marijuana, you're going to be charged. You are going to be charged with that. A lot of the cases that you see there are primarily other charges that go along with that. It's not that we're necessarily just arresting people for the marijuana charges. It's other domestic violence. You go to a domestic charge, a domestic call, and someone has someone's being arrested and they're in possession of marijuana. They're going to be charged with both of those charges. The only thing I say is that I have confidence that my officers use good discretion. I'm not saying every officer's perfect. I'm not saying that there are not cases out there where there might be disproportionate treatment. I'm not going to say that at all.
Sure.
And I totally understand what Director Richardson has said, but I truly believe we're already doing this. I think that my concern by making this an ordinance is that there's going to be people in the community that are not going to read this ordinance completely, and they're going to say that they're going to believe that this is carte blanche for them to smoke marijuana. That's my biggest concern. It's not the fact that I totally understand what he's saying, but people are going to think that this is giving them and then you're going to look at the number of complaints that are going to come in, I believe, because you're going to have citizens that are going to say, well, you said you weren't going to arrest us. Those are my concerns and that's one of the reasons why as a police chief you have to be very careful putting this type of language in a policy. You have to make sure, but like I provided Director Richardson, I told him I totally respect his decision. I totally understand why. If he recalls, we sit down and we talked about a way that we could educate the community of what we were doing. I think we're doing that right now. Here at the meeting, we've made it very clear that this is not something that we're going out here hunting people for. This is a low level of priority. We have placed our priority on overall crime in the city, and those are the things I think the citizens need to know. However, as you said, I'm very respectful. If this is something that the board of directors pass, I have no problem with that. That's a decision you all have to make. But I think I would be remiss if I would not express what my concerns are.
Well, thank you, Chief. And on the Oklahoma City, in November that same year, the Oklahoma City Police Chief wants the marijuana ordinance changed. He presented to the City Council. He wanted that changed. And it's not those folks who are carte blanche. It's not saying I hate when people, I'm not decriminalizing, I'm not legalizing smoking of marijuana. But I do know there have been cases, a number of cases, where police officers later on admitted that they falsely used the case of the smell of marijuana as a reason to do illegal search and seizures. There's documented cases of that.
But Director Richardson, that's not every police officer.
I'm talking about every police officer.
So you can't say because there are a few documented cases, and I'm not saying that it does not happen, but because what I would ask people to be very careful of, because there's a few documented cases, that means that's the overall performance of law enforcement.
So I guess my other question on that, Chief, is we can penalize and punish without arresting. We can cite. Can we not?
Yes.
So, I mean, I think from that respect, then I think it takes a lot more time, a lot officers' time, manpower and womanpower to arrest, transport, and book than it does to cite. You can penalize. We're not saying you have carte blanche to smoke marijuana. You're going to get penalized. You get caught.
Right. And we're doing that, sir. We're writing more citations than we've ever written for possession of marijuana. And I can tell you there's probably times when the officers don't even address those small amounts of marijuana. And I think what you have to understand, just to address Mr. Rakoff's question, Medical marijuana, you have to have a card. Sure. And just because you have medical marijuana does not give you carte blanche to drive a vehicle.
Sure.
You cannot drive a vehicle and smoke marijuana, just like you can't have a medical marijuana card and be in possession of a weapon. So I think we need to get that straight before we start saying things like that. And then the other thing is, I totally understand what you're saying. You asked me my opinion. Director Adcock wanted my opinion. I'm just telling you my opinion as a police professional that's been in the police force, police business for 31 years, and also as an African-American male, 56 years old. I totally understand, but
As do I. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. And but one of the things I will say, in doing the audits of the department, this is already in place.
But here's my question on it, Chief. I agree. And when you and I met, I told you my opinion would be is we don't need an ordinance to address this. I think we need to have some kind of directive, administrative directive, and I keep hearing this is our approach. I'm trying to find out what is the problem with us putting this in writing. We don't have anything in writing, and you admitted that to me.
No,
this
we
is
don't.
our approach, but this is not a policy. So that an approach could be selectively enforced based on whatever prejudices or biases you may have or may not have. So to me, there's no penalties if you're selectively enforcing that approach. It's not a policy, is what I'm hearing.
But Director Richardson, what I would say, would you not say that every time an officer makes an arrest or come in contact with someone, that's discretion? Do you need a policy or a directive for everything or every time? Why marijuana? Why not seat belts? Why not 5 miles over the speed limit?
Sure.
Why not that? Why just this?
Because we are arresting people. We're doing this subjectively. We're arresting people who, I think in some cases, we've seen other cities after we defeated mine that passes. We're arresting people. Those arrests, like Mr. Grant said, are having someone impact on someone's ability to receive a Pell Grant. In some cases, employment. In other cases, housing, which you would agree with me are some of the precursors to criminal activity if we don't address those issues proactively. So it's not saying that you can use it carte blanche. It's not encouraging. It's not legalizing. It's not decriminalizing. It's just figuring out a better way to approach it. We can better use manpower and woman power doing citations, I think, rather than doing the arrests, because those arrests are having a disproportionate effect and impact on people like you, me, the mayor, and Bruce. And that's facts. Research shows us that. That's not anything that's subjective. That's not anything I pulled out of my mind. I pulled off of YouTube. That's research. It's facts, Chief. That we don't have a directive. We don't have anything in writing to back up and support your notion, your predecessor's notion, and your predecessor's notion that that's always been our approach. If that's been our approach, how could we have a 95% increase in marijuana arrest possession solely between 2012 and 2016?
I can't answer that because I wasn't here. But what I can tell you is that those aren't the numbers from 2018 and 19. So I can assure you that. And so I can't speak. And what I would ask is not to base this on 2012, 2016. Look at what we're doing here now. Look at what we've done over the last 2 years. But like I said, I respect your opinion. We will, whatever you all do, I will respect that. But as a police chief, I have to give you my opinion of the fact that, keep in mind, marijuana is still a scheduled drug and it's still a violation of federal law. So even what you're saying, don't make it seem. I don't want you to make it seem as though marijuana is just a minor thing, because what we're seeing, the things that we're seeing out here regarding the citations that we're issuing,
Sure.
They're not focusing on those high levels of THC that are in the marijuana that's causing people to react the way they are. So how do you know that? How do you know? I mean, it's just one of those things that, as a police chief, I can't tell my officers to make this a low priority. What I can say is, this is what we're focused on, and we've been focused on overall crime and violent crime.
I got you. That makes sense.
Yeah, and that's what our focus is, and I have to be very careful with doing that.
Well, if you say, one more question, Mayor, if you say that you have to be careful telling your officers that, but you're telling me you're already doing that, I'm somewhat confused. If we're already doing that, what are you telling them to make them do that?
Because we're focusing on the violent crimes and we're focusing on overall crime. And so that is basically saying these are the things that we're looking at. We're looking at what the FBI considers Category 1 and Category 2 crimes. So
it's not saying it's just lowering the priority. You understand?
Understand.
It's
Yes,
not.
sir.
It's not saying we don't do anything.
Absolutely.
There's going to be some
Absolutely.
cases where we're going to have large amounts of
Yes, sir.
distribution.
I
But
understand.
we're talking about the small amounts that we catch.
Yes, sir.
Adults for their personal use, that we spend time arresting and transporting them to the penitentiary when our manpower and woman power could be better utilized, addressing some of the violent crimes we're talking about. And I think that a citation and a fine is a sufficient penalty, and I think it's less use of our officers' time, and yes, less use of our jail space, which I'll guarantee you, at some point in time, we're going to come back with another increase request for expanding the jail. At some point in time, we're going to come back with another request for expanding your police force. And I think one of the things we could do, in my opinion, and allow me the right to be wrong in my opinion, is figure out ways to better utilize the forces that we have in place right now. And Mayor, I will tell you this. In New York City, the directive came from the mayor. The mayor directed his police chief to adopt that approach.
Thank you so much for sharing that information. Director Wright.
Thank you, Chief, for your input in this. It's a dilemma for me.
Yes, ma'am.
I have nephews, and I know some of them smoke. They don't live here, but they do smoke. This is my dilemma, and for my colleagues on the board, I have implemented a program to help young people get jobs, and particularly 18 to 34. We're trying to work and meet that need. That's the big problem. I've heard it said by my colleagues that this is a difficult population to work with. Well, if we get them through the training, and then they get the interview, and then they can't pass the drug test, we're right back where we started. And that's my dilemma.
Yes, ma'am.
I've seen it. Just trying to get a maintenance person hired. We went through 3 people that couldn't pass the drug test.
Yes.
So are we sending that message with this? That's my chief dilemma.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I understand young people are going to be young people.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
definitely understand your situation. That would be a hard. Yeah. See. So I mean, it's very difficult, but this is something that I'm going to ask.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, I've listened to the exchange. If that is your take, why can't you make it a directive that this is what, a written directive, so that we would not have to send that message?
I will do whatever the board and the mayor direct me to do.
Director Wright, one thing I do want the board to think through on this.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a federal government that's asking bizarre questions now, trying to find out if we're violating the president's immigration policies, and if they find that we are, they're cutting off funding. And the Department of Justice has already announced that it does not adhere to the states that have medical or even recreational use marijuana amendments, that they still think these things need to be prosecuted, and they've directed the U.S. attorneys to do that. I think the chief's concern, and I don't want to be speaking for you, but you put in writing there's a law you're not going to obey, then what is the ramification?
Exactly.
Do you come up and the next time he asks for a grant to help get body cameras, he can't get it because we have a directive that says don't do this?
So if this ordinance goes into effect, that could impact the...
I'm just saying that I've seen things come from Washington in the last 2 years that I have not seen in the last 67 years. And I can't guarantee that they won't. I saw the U.S. Attorney General say we're going to enforce marijuana laws even in states that have these constitutional amendments after the administration changed. I don't have statistics to say that that's happening or not happening. I'm just saying that the chief is being asked, why can't you make it a directive? And I think the real problem that the chief has, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is I put in writing what is effectively violate the law.
Yeah.
What does that say to my officers?
Well, that explains that. Thank
And
you.
the prosecutor, I mean, what is that? How does that impact the prosecuting attorney? You know, what is he to think about a police chief that puts into a writing and a directive that says don't do this? So when the chief does it as the law enforcement officer, that's law enforcement doing it. That's not a political issue. That's not a policy issue. That is a direct statement by the man who took an oath that he's going to uphold all of the laws.
Now, so I did hear, I thought either you or Director Richardson said it. I can't quite remember which one. If a person is smoking marijuana and they're driving a vehicle, are they not impaired as if it would be some other type of drug?
They can be, it's kind of, you have to give them the test to determine if they're impaired, but they can't be in possession of any type of marijuana. You talk about the medical marijuana, you have to have a card in order to do that. But even if you have a card, you shouldn't be driving. That doesn't give you the right to drive a vehicle. It doesn't give you the right to have a weapon. It doesn't give you a right to be in public intoxicated. So I think there's some misnomers about the medical marijuana. You still have to, and it's like you said, it's still marijuana. And we're not even focusing on that. Our main focus is, I'm very hesitant to put this in a directive, because what else do I need to put in a directive? Well, why not put in a directive that, like I said earlier, speeding over 5 miles an hour is the lowest level of priority. So we will not, that's our lowest level of priority. What else? I mean, there's so many different things I could put in, someone throwing trash out of the car. Although, are we going to enforce? We don't see that very often, but that's the lowest level of priority. I put that out there. Texting and driving. We haven't had a lot of accidents because of it, but I'm going to make that the lowest level of priority. You have to be very careful singling out different things like that. I totally understand Director Richardson. He and I have talked. I totally understand what he's saying. I respect his passion. I do. I respect his passion for it. But it puts me as a police chief in a bad situation. I think I can't speak for why the chief of Jacksonville did that. I can't speak for it. I did speak with him, and he had his reasons for doing it. But that's Jacksonville. That's not Little Rock. And so that's all I'm saying. We're doing this. We're not arresting people. We're not physically taking people to jail. We're writing as many citations as we can. But then my question is, how many of those people that we're stopping that we're not even charging for those offenses? So there might be times when we encounter someone that might have a small amount of marijuana and we're not even charging them for it. We might take it and seize it and put it in a property room or something like that. Or we might just charge them with something else and not the marijuana. I'm just saying, so there's all those options out there. There's all those things that could be going on. But you have to really be careful, because although the state law might say that it's a misdemeanor, it's still a federal violation it's still a federal law.
And it is a personal decision.
It's a personal decision, and I totally understand what he said. I've heard it. I've read the numbers. I've had people that have questioned, should they have been stopped? That's a debatable thing, but whatever the directors
Chief,
directors advise me to do, and the mayor.
Yes, sir. You and I, we were doing our meeting. We talked about an
Yes,
alternative to an ordinance, and we talked about engaging the city attorney with you and the mayor's chief of staff to figure out a way to address this other than the ordinance. Now, I don't. Here's where I'm confused. I don't know how we're doing it. You say we're doing it right now. I don't know how that's communicated to our officers. And what's the difference between you saying we're doing it right now than us putting it in writing? Because we have media here, we have people watching us, Mayor, on the internet and on TV. How is that different? You're saying we're already doing it. Is what I thought I heard you say. We're doing it already currently.
Yes, sir. I'm saying that we are focusing on violent crimes, and overall crime. So I'm saying that these are what the officers are focusing on. I'm not saying that the officers are not addressing the marijuana issues, but when we do encounter people with marijuana, we're writing tickets. Are we encountering people with marijuana every day? I'm sure we are. But are we taking them to jail? We're writing them citations. That's what you're asking, and we're doing that. And the numbers, the numbers will show that we're doing that. But the thing that I would ask you to keep in mind, a lot of these arrests that we make out here for domestic violence, for people having traffic warrants, for people stealing and things like that, keep in mind people do already have, they're in possession of some forms of marijuana, and so we charge them with both.
Sure.
And so I don't want you to get that confused with the fact of that arrest wasn't made because of that marijuana. That arrest was made of something else. They were charged with the marijuana also. However, we are writing the citations. If you look at the numbers, we are writing more citations for marijuana than we are. So it's out there. But your question to me is, why don't we put it in writing? And I don't think it needs to be put in writing.
How's it communicated? How do you take? I mean, it's a directive, and your predecessor said this. He said he doubts very seriously that we have anybody in the county jail for marijuana possession only. I understand what you're saying about a combination of other crimes, but I'm talking about marijuana possession solely. At the same time, he admitted, and I know we have people in the county jail right now, they're in there for failure to pay child support in the county jail. I know people in the county jail right now in the county jail for loitering. So I don't know how, at the time he said we don't have anybody in the county jail for marijuana possession solely, he could make that claim and then admit after I questioned him about whether or not we have people in there for failure to pay child support or loitering. So I'm not talking about absent any other crime, I understand. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about possession solely. And you're saying we're citing right now. Are we arresting some still? We are arresting people.
I'm sure there are some. I can't sit here and tell you that there are not any, but I'm sure there are some. I can't tell you 100% no. But even if you pass this ordinance, I can't guarantee you that the officers won't make arrests. I can't, and I won't guarantee you that, because I cannot tell the officers to not enforce or make this a low-level priority. I can't do that, because I'm basically telling the officers in certain things that crimes come to with a different level. And so they do. There are misdemeanors and felonies. Sure. I have to be very careful with that, because the bottom line is, what do I do next? Well, if we're going to make this a low priority, why don't we make something else a lower priority? Well, why not this? Well, why not this? That's why you have to be really careful with that.
Well, I understand that, and I also understand that the impact it has on, and you admitted that, growing up as a black male, you understand what I'm talking about.
Yes, sir, I do.
Understand the impact it has on people who look like you, me, Mr. Moore, and Mr. Scott. And I think it's those kind of fair and equitable issues within our law enforcement department, within our criminal justice system, that I would be remiss if I didn't figure out a way to try to help address those. But those are the ones that are keeping a lot of our people back. And the people that keep them back, Chief, are the very ones that we're requesting more officers to patrol and control, not protect and serve. So I think therein lies the conflict with me.
Director Richardson, if I may, I don't mean to belabor this, but let me say this. Yes, as an African-American male, I understand. I'm a civil rights child. I totally understand. I've read the stories. I know. I would ask anybody to watch the movie 13. If you haven't watched the movie 13, it gives you a pretty clear. But it would also be unfair to me to say that all people are affected by this gentleman here, being Caucasian. He's telling you he's affected by it. I think as a police chief, my concern, I have to be concerned about everybody. And I totally know what you're saying. I totally understand it. I get it. I know that goes on. But would you want a police chief that's just worried about what goes on in one area of the community?
We're not talking about one area, Chief. We're talking about one issue. And the issue, it crosses not just located south to 630. There's been ample research that shows marijuana use is the same relative between the black population and the white population. The enforcement of penalties, the enforcement of marijuana use is heavily concentrated on the black population. I'm not saying it's related to it's singly related to black people. I mean, I know across the board, the use is pretty much the same, but the enforcement of it is much different. And I think a lower priority with the young man who went to jail for, I think he said, a joint in his pocket. I think that those kinds of incidents or issues that concern me. I'm not saying we forget about the white population. I'm just talking about the disproportionate effect it has on the poor population.
But I will tell you, in the 90s and the early 2000s, there was a big push on arresting for marijuana possession. There was. And I can tell you that has, as years go by, that's dwindled, because now we're focusing on opioids, and we're focusing on those type of drugs. But there was a big push back in 90s, 2000s, early 2000s, or whatever, even probably up to 2010 or 11 for that push. I'm not seeing that big push now. I'm seeing more citations. I'm seeing more cite and releases, and I'm seeing more, hey, just go home. I'm seeing more of that.
Well, Mayor, before I call the question, Chief, I agree. I think the war, you mentioned the war on drugs, or the war on marijuana, whatever the drug of choice was. It really was a war on people. It wasn't a war on drugs. And here's what I find really, really interesting. The opioid crisis now is a health disease. Drug addiction, whether it was crack or cocaine, in minority communities, they weren't treated as health issues. They were treated as criminal issues. And you see the difference? So right now, the opioid is a health crisis. It's a health crisis.
Yes, sir.
It's not a criminal crisis. And conversely, in the past, it wasn't couched that way.
Yes, sir.
When we had drugs that impacted low-income people, whether black, white, brown.
Yes, sir.
So, Mayor, I call the question. I thank you, Chief, for being here tonight.
And I'll say it again, whatever the board of directors and the mayor directs us to do, I will follow suit on that. I would respect whatever decision is made.
Thank you, sir.
Director Adcock.
I was going to ask for calling the question.
All those in favor of calling the question, say aye. All those opposed, say nay. Questions been called. All those in favor of the third and final reading of this particular, all those in favor of item number 17, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay.
Roll call.
This is on the calling the question.
No.
No, it's on the actual ordinance.
This is on the ordinance.
Director Webb? Yes. Director Peck? Yes. Director Hines? Director Wright?
No.
Director Campuris? Director Fortson? No. Director Adcock? No. Director Hendricks? Present? No. Director Richardson?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wyrick? You're voting yes?
Just to clarify.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Mayor.
4-5-1.
Thank you. We now have citizens' communications.
It failed. You announced that.
He said that.
Already taken care of that, Director Adcock.
It failed.
We'll now have Shayla Hooks for citizens' communication.
Hello. I'm Shayla Hooks. I'm a demolition contractor with the City of Little Rock. I've been doing it for 2 years now. And ever since I've started doing demolition with the city, I really appreciate the city giving me an opportunity to learn this profession and also employ my children to work with me. But I have encountered several problems
Ms.
with
Hooks,
the city.
could you move the microphone just a little bit so we
Okay.
can hear you?
I have encountered several problems with the city. I've contacted several people within different city departments, and I have failed to receive help. First of all, I received I won a bid at the zoo recently, and when I won a bid at the zoo, I was given a contract by the city attorney's office, and the contract was the exact same contract that I receive whenever I do residential demolitions. When I came in to become a demolition contractor, I was told by Rick Purifoy, whenever you do jobs within the city, you get discounted rates at the landfill. So every job I've done, I have about 20 contracts here. That's residential contracts, and one contract that is for the zoo born camel demolition. And so once I won that bid, I proceeded to go to the landfill once I got my permit to get my slip so I can receive discounted rates. Once I got there, the lady that works there told me she didn't know anything about me getting discounted rates, and therefore I was stuck paying for the fees. So I went and contacted the mayor's office, the city manager's office, Ms. Wright, and let them know, hey, I've been doing work with the city several times. I've only gone into one orientation. At one orientation, I was given the direction that you get discounted rates. So every time I bid, I'm assuming I get discounted rates. And nobody's ever told me anything different. And also, in every contract I have, it says nothing about discounted rates. So I don't even know where the direction came from to give the landfill this direction, and why no one is standing up and saying that, hey, yeah, I acknowledge even the guys in building inspection told me once I went in to speak with them, every time we've contracted a job out that is a commercial job, we have sent an email to the landfill and they have given the contractor a discounted rate. I don't know if it's because I'm a woman, I don't know if it's because I'm a black woman, but I've contacted several contractors that have been contracting with the city of Little Rock, and they told me, hey, we've knocked down gas stations, buildings, we always receive discounted rates. And since my contract is the very same, this contract here is the very same as the contract I received for a house. I never received any kind of different. Do I have to stop?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
But we'll take your information under advisement, Director Wright. Do it again, I'm sorry. Yes.
Okay. Mayor, this is the situation that I've been trying to work through with the manager, and I apologize, Ms. Hooks. I got overwhelmed with some other issues, but I'm not satisfied with the response that I've gotten to your situation. And Mayor, as I was working with Abdul in procurement, these are some of the revisions that we need to make and make sure that we have a consistent policy department-wide as it comes to our contracts. And he has been trying to work through and getting something that's more uniform throughout, because like she said, she's been using the same one and the same one they gave her. Now, I understand everything that Mr. Moore said, but I totally disagree, and I really do feel, Mr. Moore, that she should have been given a discount on this, because your failure to have it in the contract, it should not be something that she has to eat. And it's unfair in my mind, because I know from experience that discounts are given, and I just don't understand why we can't say, okay, yeah, let's just go ahead and do that, let's move forward, let's correct this, so that we got a uniform process. And if you're going to use the same contract, revise it and put the thing in there. So I'm asking for that.
Mayor, members of the board, I think this issue obviously arose. I was made aware of it last week. Ms. Brooks was a successful bidder, the low bidder, and in the bid process, there was nothing that would have led any of the bidders to believe that they were going to get a discounted rate. So, going forward, after talking to Director Wright and also to John Honeywell, I think going for and in the purchasing department, we can put something in place that if it's a city bid, that working with Public Works, because when she went out to Public Works, they they had no clue, or to the landfill, they had no clue that she was supposed to get or she thought she was getting a discounted rate. She had signed a contract. Here's her low bid, and we're going to honor that bid. But I think John going forward is putting something in place to ensure that all of his colleagues realize if you're doing some type of demolition, let Public Works know up front. And I think that's also going to be in our purchasing bid guidelines going forward. But I think if I was the unsuccessful bidder in this particular case, because in my bid I put the cost of going to the landfill in there, I think that would be unfair. But again, going forward, I think we have addressed it.
Thank you so much, Mr. Moore. Mr. Luke Scrable.
Thank you. Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Hooks. And we do appreciate your feedback, and as you know, we are working to rectify the issue.
Good evening. My subject tonight is why illegal citizen communication guideline is used instead of the signed ordinance 21010. This ordinance was signed by all 10 directors unanimously on March the 3rd, 2015. It states 3 minutes are allowed to present a specific item which is not already on the agenda. No advance permission is required, but persons wishing to address the city board are required to fill out a yellow card listing the specific subject to be addressed and handed to the city clerk upon arrival. On January the 8th, the first meeting of this administration, the citizen communications read 3 minutes are allowed to present a specific item that has not been previously brought to the attention of the board and is not already on the agenda. That is against the ordinance that you signed. That's the one-time rule. Then after I brought it to the mayor's attention in January, he took that out, but then he added and changed the board. I said, if you want to speak to the board, you have to fill out a yellow card listing the specific subject to be addressed and handed to the clerk on arrival. Excuse me, that is correct. Now, what has been done now is you have half of the legal ordinance that you signed. And y'all kicked me out on the 7th of May, and you used the law that wasn't voted on unanimously by this board. So my question is, seeing the mayor's gone, Vice Mayor, you're my ward rep, why would we opt to use an illegal set of rules when the board signed an order and passed it and it's not in use now? The city gave me this website answering an FOI question about the decorum rules. 4 down from it are the citizen communication rules. They're exactly verbatim to the signed ordinance that was signed by this unanimous board on March the 3rd. My question is, why would you restrict free speech with rules and a law that's not written down? I would like an answer. Or is illegality and just breaking the law and doing what you want to do? Free speech is no longer available here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Scrable. Casey Ferris.
Hello, good evening. How are you? So I'm going to change the tone a little bit to something a little bit more upbeat. So I'm a avid athlete. I like playing all sports, anything with the ball. I'm usually pretty good at it. I moved to Arkansas about 5 years, and so far been pretty pleasant to me. It's, a little bit better than Mississippi, so I mean, there you go. But at least not the football team anyway, though. So anyway, So I've been playing volleyball at Murray Park for about since roughly March of this past year, and I want to say recently, in the last 5 months or so, before the great flood of 2019, they added several courts to us, and that was a big thing. You know, we had several courts. We have had a lot of people, a lot of increased interest out there showing up because of the added courts. Now, my dilemma is that now the days are getting shorter. We're going to stop having hours to play during the week time. So I know some of our I guess not say predecessors, but some of our previous members have came here and approached the board before and asked for lights to be put out there. And I've been told that they've run through a bidding process. I don't know where that's went. I don't know who was talked to. But I'm here today to just present the idea of potentially getting some lights out there. And the reason I say that is because I've heard it, several other people brought up in this the chamber, or whatever you want to call it, about tourism, money, getting people here. And I'd like to point out that Little Rock has almost no volleyball, like for as far as like big name volleyball, nowhere. You either got to go to Memphis, losing business to Memphis, Nashville, Tennessee, Fayetteville, Arkansas, or Dallas, Texas. I don't see why any reason that we can't set up a few lights out there and have some tournaments and revenue brought into Arkansas. And actually, just as general of the tournaments themselves, tourism, I mean, the whole thing. I mean, who knows? I mean, maybe we could get a big name tour like AVP America to come by one day and run a tournament. I'm just saying, I've been to several facilities around here, and there's not many that have such an impressive facilities like we got. I mean, we have 9 functional courts. The most I've ever seen is 4, and I don't see why we couldn't potentially get something going. And I'd really like some feedback, is maybe talk to somebody and see if we couldn't get something worked out. I'm a huge player. I love the game, and I'd really like maybe an opportunity to talk with somebody and see if we couldn't get something going on it.
Well, Casey, we'll get you in touch with John Eckert, our Parks and Recreations Director. We'll share with you that we're currently underway with the Community Task Force, which is called our R3 Little Rock Parks Task Force, as we're going to reinvest, reimagine, revitalize War Memorial and Hyman Parks. And part of that process, in addition to those very significant parks to our overall park system, we're looking at other parks as well, and how do we include other forms of activity. And part of that process is a regional youth sports complex that will include both indoor and outdoor activity. Separately, our Little Rock Convention and Visitors Bureau has just done a RFQ request for RFQ that is now out on the street for a sports study, both indoor and outdoors, that will include a lot of what you're talking about. That RFQ proposal deadline is August the 30th, and so that's also kind of in tandem with what we're doing. And part of that board, that task force, we have City Vice Mayor B.J. Wyrick, as well as City Director Kathy Webb, who are part of that process that we've commissioned, and hopes to have that information to us by the end of this year as we look towards the future for the long-term planning of those very 2 significant parks to our park system, as well as our overall park system.
Roger. So I got a question. Is there anything you need from me? Because I can put you in contact with just as many people that feel as passionately about
our
the
next
sport.
meeting, I believe, is for the Parks Task Force, which generally is at the center at University Park. I believe it's either this Wednesday or next. Is it next Wednesday? Is it this Wednesday? Tomorrow at what time? Next Wednesday at 3:30, I believe. 3:30 at the center at University Park. We invite you to attend, and that's on 12th Street.
Right. So it's like, do I need to give anybody my information?
Yes, if you'll leave your information with the city clerk, and we'll make sure you put you in touch with John Eckert, our director of parks. Yes.
Right. Well, again, if there's something I can do, like maybe a PowerPoint presentation, something, just take a bunch of pictures. Again, I'm here to get the wheels rolling, and maybe we can get this thing.
Well, we're excited that you've had that type of excitement and energy and enthusiasm for our city, and we'll get you connected with Mr. Eckert.
All right. Definitely appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Hendricks, did you have a question?
It's something for Mr. Moore. I wanted to ask Mr. Moore, when the gentleman was here talking about public works, and I wanted to know, I think I may have this wrong, but the streets over by the Med Center where we would be doing Pine, is it Pine and
Cedar?
Cedar, yeah. I wanted to make sure that you check to have minority contractors. We just don't have enough minority contractors participating in all this money. That's it.
Well, I want to be clear on that. That's going to be we'll relay that to the UMS, but the UMS is going to let that bid. I think we're all very sensitive to that.
So are we giving any money for this, the city?
We are for the
And that's what we
boulevard.
have.
Correct.
Yeah. Don't be bashful. If you need me, let me know.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Director Richardson.
Yes, Mayor. Director Hendricks, I'm meeting with the Vice Chancellor and Dr. Gardner tomorrow from UAMS, and I will certainly pass your concerns over to them. They seem to be willing to work with us and help us address many of the issues we need to help them deal with to make their work more successful. So I'm meeting with the Vice Chancellor, Mayor, tomorrow, and Dr. Gardner. I think she was here last week before last, tomorrow, to talk about that particular project. So I will certainly pass your concern on to them.
And Director Richardson, thank you so much for your engagement in that process.
Yes, sir.
Seeing no other questions, motion to adjourn. All those.
I need to read that.
Oh, I'm sorry. We do have one more, and we have one more item that we need to read in. I apologize. The Little Rock Police Department has received notification from the federal government that they are eligible to apply for the Justice Assistance Grants, and as part of the application process, the city clerk will now read a statement into minute record of the meeting.
The Little Rock Police Department has received notification of eligibility to apply for funds for the fiscal year 2019 Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistant Grant Program. The amount of allocation for Little Rock and Pulaski County is $274,461. As part of the application process, the Little Rock Police Department is required to notify its governing body of this eligibility.
We don't need it. Thank you so much for that reading, Madam Clerk. All those in favor of adjournment, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Motion to adjourn.